Have you ever felt the sting of rejection simply because of what you believe? Have you ever wondered why following Jesus, who embodied love, mercy, and truth, could cause the world to turn against his disciples? What if persecution is not a sign of failure, but rather evidence that you truly belong to him? In John 15:18-27, Jesus speaks words that strike at the very heart of discipleship. These verses form part of his farewell discourse, spoken to the disciples in the upper room on the night before his crucifixion. Having just spoken of the vine and the branches, emphasizing the call to abide in him and bear fruit, he now shifts to prepare them for the reality of hostility. Love is the core of the Christian life, but hatred will often be its companion. The disciples are called to remain in Christ, to love one another, and to bear fruit. Yet Jesus warns that the world's reaction will not always be acceptance, but rejection. He begins with sobering clarity. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. These words are both a warning and a comfort. The disciples will face hatred, but it is not without precedent. The hostility directed toward them is ultimately hostility toward Christ himself. The world rejected him, the Son of God, who came in love, truth, and light. It should not surprise them, then, that those who follow him will also be rejected. What does Jesus mean by the world? In John's Gospel, the world often refers to humanity in rebellion against God, the system of values, beliefs, and actions opposed to his truth and his reign. This is not about geography, but about spiritual posture. The world, in this sense, resists the light because it exposes darkness. It resists truth because it threatens lies. It resists love because it convicts selfishness. Therefore, those who belong to Christ, who embody his light, truth, and love, will naturally face opposition. Jesus explains further, "If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you." This is a profound reminder of identity. Disciples are no longer of the world, they have been chosen out of it. Their allegiance, values, and hope are different. This very difference creates tension. The world celebrates conformity, but discipleship calls us to transformation. The world embraces compromise, but discipleship calls us to conviction. The world may tolerate a superficial religiosity, but it despises the radical allegiance that Jesus demands. This theme of being chosen is critical. The disciples did not choose themselves. Jesus chose them. This choice marks them as his own, and that identity cannot be hidden. Just as light cannot be concealed, just as salt cannot lose its distinctiveness, so too believers cannot blend seamlessly into a world opposed to Christ. Their very presence, shaped by Christ, provokes a response. Sometimes curiosity, sometimes admiration, but often hatred. Jesus adds, "Remember what I told you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also." Here he roots their experience in his own. To follow him is to share in his path, not only of glory, but also of suffering. The cross was not only his destiny, but the pattern for all who would follow him. This is not to discourage them, but to prepare them, to ensure that they do not stumble when opposition comes. Persecution, rather than disproving their faith, confirms their union with Christ. Yet Jesus also notes a paradox. If they obeyed my teaching, they will obey yours also. While some will reject the message, others will receive it. The gospel is divisive in this sense. It divides those who embrace truth from those who resist it. The disciples will experience both hostility and fruitfulness. They must not be disheartened by rejection, for acceptance will also come. Their role is to bear witness faithfully, leaving the results in God's hands. Jesus identifies the root of this hatred. "They will treat you this way because of my name, for they do not know the one who sent me." Persecution is not random. It is connected to allegiance to Jesus. The world's opposition to the disciples flows from its ignorance and rejection of God himself. This is not simply about social tension, but about spiritual blindness. To hate the Son is to hate the Father. To reject the messenger is to reject the one who sent him. This underscores the seriousness of the world's response to Christ. He intensifies the point. If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not be guilty of sin. But now they have no excuse for their sin. Jesus coming into the world, his teaching, his miracles, his very presence, revealed the truth of God in undeniable ways. This revelation heightened responsibility. To reject him was no longer ignorance, but rebellion. Their hatred exposed their refusal to accept the light. The same remains true today. The clearer the truth is revealed, the greater the accountability for rejecting it. Jesus continues, "Whoever hates me hates my Father as well. If I had not done among them the works no one else did, they would not be guilty of sin. As it is, they have seen, and yet they have hated both me and my Father." His miracles were not simply displays of power, but signs pointing to his identity as the Son of God. To reject him despite such works was to reject the Father himself. This hatred was not rooted in ignorance, but in willful blindness. It fulfilled what was written in their law. They hated me without reason. This prophecy, drawn from the Psalms, reminds the disciples that the rejection of Christ was not accidental, but part of God's foreknowledge. Hatred toward him had been foretold. This truth offers comfort. Their persecution is neither new nor unexpected. They are part of a larger story, one that God is sovereignly weaving together. Yet Jesus does not leave them with the grim prospect of hatred. He shifts to the promise of the Spirit. When the Advocate comes, whom I will send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth who goes out from the Father, he will testify about me. This is the great assurance. Though the world hates them, they will not face it alone. The Spirit will be with them, bearing witness to Christ, strengthening their hearts, guiding their words, and empowering their mission. The Spirit is not merely a helper, but a witness. He testifies to the truth of Christ, confirming the message in the hearts of those who hear. This means the disciples' mission is not dependent on their own eloquence or strength, but on the Spirit's power. Even in the face of hostility, their witness will be effective because it is Spirit-driven. Jesus concludes, "And you also must testify, for you have been with me from the beginning." The Spirit's witness does not replace theirs, but empowers it. They are called to speak, to proclaim, to bear testimony to Christ. Their authority rests in their experience with him, their first-hand knowledge of his life, death, and resurrection. This testimony, combined with the Spirit's power, will turn the world upside down, even as it provokes persecution. For modern believers, these words still ring true. Following Jesus will not always lead to applause. In some contexts, it may mean ridicule, rejection, or even danger. In others, it may mean subtle forms of exclusion or hostility. Yet the principle remains. Those who truly belong to Christ will face resistance. But this is not a sign of abandonment. It is a mark of identity. To share in his rejection is to share in his life. At the same time, the promise of the Spirit assures us that we are never alone. The Advocate continues to testify, to strengthen, to empower. Our witness is not in vain because it is grounded in his presence. And our persecution is not without purpose, for it aligns us with the story of Christ and the mission of God. This passage challenges us to embrace both the cost and the comfort of discipleship. The cost is real, to be hated, misunderstood, or marginalized because of allegiance to Jesus. But the comfort is greater, the Spirit within us, the presence of God, the assurance that rejection by the world is evidence of acceptance by him. As Jesus prepared his disciples for what lay ahead, he did not sugarcoat the path, but neither did he leave them without hope. The world's hatred is real, but his love is greater. Persecution is painful, but his Spirit is powerful. Their mission would be difficult, but their testimony would change the world. These words remain as relevant today as they were in the upper room. For every follower of Christ, the question is not whether the world will always embrace us, but whether we will remain faithful when it does not. The promise of Jesus is clear. The Spirit will testify, and we too must testify. Even when the world hates, we are called to love. Even when the world rejects, we are called to remain. And even when the world opposes, we are called to bear witness to the one who first loved us, who first chose us, and who will never leave us. As we move into the second part of Jesus' teaching, in John 15, verse 18 to 27, we see how his words prepare his disciples not only for the hostility they would soon face, but also for the larger reality of living as his witnesses in a world set against him. In the first part, we explored the sobering truth that the world's hatred toward the disciples is rooted in its hatred toward Christ, and that this opposition is inevitable because those who follow Jesus have been chosen out of the world. Now in part 2, we turn our focus toward how this persecution unfolds, why it matters, and what it reveals about the relationship between Christ, his disciples, the world, and the Spirit. Jesus' words in this passage are not theoretical musings. They are given in a context of immediate urgency. Within hours, he would be betrayed, arrested, and led to the cross. His disciples would scatter in fear, and the reality of opposition would become painfully clear. Yet he does not leave them to stumble blindly into this storm. He tells them in advance, so that when it happens, they will not be shaken. This is part of his shepherding love. He prepares his people for the road ahead. The first truth he underscores is that persecution is not arbitrary. It is not the result of mere misunderstanding or personal conflict. Instead, it is fundamentally spiritual. They will treat you this way because of my name, for they do not know the one who sent me. Here Jesus reveals the root cause of hostility. To reject him is to reject the Father. To hate him is to hate God himself. Therefore, those who carry his name will inevitably encounter resistance because they represent the very presence of God to a world that prefers autonomy. This is a sobering reminder that allegiance to Christ is not neutral. His name provokes strong reactions, either of faith or of opposition. His presence exposes the heart, and people must respond. For those who long for truth and life, his name is salvation. For those who cling to self-rule, his name is a threat. The disciples would bear that name into the world, and their treatment would reflect how people respond to Christ himself. Jesus adds weight to this by saying, "If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not be guilty of sin. But now they have no excuse for their sin." At first glance, this statement can sound confusing. Does he mean that people were innocent before he came? Not exactly. Rather, his coming brought light so clear that sin could no longer hide in the shadows of ignorance. His words, his works, and his very presence revealed God's truth in undeniable ways. To reject him after such revelation is not mere ignorance, but willful rebellion. In other words, his coming intensified responsibility. With greater light comes greater accountability. This principle continues today. Where the gospel is proclaimed, people are faced with a choice. They can receive the light or reject it. They can bow to Christ or turn away. But they cannot claim ignorance. This makes the task of witness both urgent and weighty. Every proclamation of the gospel is an invitation and a dividing line. It offers life, but also exposes sin. Jesus presses further. Whoever hates me hates my Father as well. This is a radical claim, especially in the Jewish context. Many of his opponents believed they were defending God's honor by rejecting him. But Jesus flips the script. To hate the Son is to hate the Father. To reject him is to reject God himself. The unity of the Father and the Son is so complete that the world cannot separate them. This is why the stakes are so high. Belief in Jesus is not optional devotion, but the very essence of knowing God. To reinforce this, Jesus points to his works. If I had not done among them the works no one else did, they would not be guilty of sin. As it is, they have seen, and yet they have hated both me and my Father. His miracles were not random acts of kindness, but signs pointing to his identity. Healing the blind, raising the dead, feeding the multitudes, these were unmistakable demonstrations of divine power. To witness such works and still reject him revealed the depth of hardened hearts. It was hatred without reason, fulfilling the scriptures that said they hated me without cause. This raises an important reflection for us. The rejection of Christ is not always logical. It often has no rational explanation. Hatred toward him, and by extension his followers, can be irrational, even when confronted with overwhelming evidence of his truth. This should both humble and strengthen us. We are not called to argue people into the kingdom by sheer logic, but to bear faithful witness, trusting the Spirit to work. At the same time, we must not be surprised when opposition comes without reason. Jesus himself experienced it, and so will we. In the midst of this bleak picture of hostility, Jesus shifts to hope. When the Advocate comes, whom I will send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth who goes out from the Father, he will testify about me. This is the turning point. Persecution is real, hatred is inevitable, but the Spirit's presence is certain. The Advocate, another name for the Holy Spirit, will not only comfort but also testify. He will bear witness to Christ, confirming the truth in the hearts of listeners, empowering the disciples' proclamation, and strengthening them in the face of opposition. The Spirit's role here is essential. Without him, the disciples would crumble under the weight of rejection. Their human strength was insufficient, as Peter's denial later that night would prove. But with the Spirit, they would be transformed. Fearful fishermen would become bold preachers. Ordinary men would stand before rulers and declare Christ without shame. Their words would not rest on eloquence, but on the Spirit's power. This is the same Spirit who continues to testify today, convicting hearts, opening eyes, and drawing people to Christ. Yet notice how Jesus connects the Spirit's testimony with theirs. And you also must testify, for you have been with me from the beginning. The Spirit does not replace human witness, but empowers it. The disciples had the unique role of being eyewitnesses to Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. Their testimony, empowered by the Spirit, would become the foundation of the church's mission. But in a broader sense, every believer shares in this calling. We too must testify. We may not have seen Jesus in the flesh, but we have experienced his transforming grace. Our lives, our words, our actions bear witness to him. This raises a profound question. How do we respond to the reality of persecution today? In some parts of the world, followers of Christ face imprisonment, violence, or even death for his name. In other contexts, the opposition may come in subtler forms: mockery, exclusion, or professional consequences. Whatever form it takes, Jesus' words remain true. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. Opposition is not a sign that we are failing, but often a sign that we are faithfully aligned with him. At the same time, we must be careful not to seek persecution as if it were a badge of honor in itself. The point is not to provoke hatred unnecessarily, but to remain faithful to Christ even when it comes. The world's rejection should never be because of our arrogance, harshness, or lack of love, but because of our allegiance to Jesus. Peter later echoes this when he writes, "If you suffer, it should not be as a murderer or thief or any other kind of criminal or even as a meddler. However, if you suffer as a Christian, do not be ashamed, but praise God that you bear that name." The encouragement of this passage lies not in avoiding persecution, but in knowing that we are not alone in it. The Spirit testifies with us. God himself dwells with us, and our witness, even when rejected by the world, is precious in his sight. For modern disciples, this text calls us to several responses. First, it calls us to courage. We should not be surprised by opposition, but strengthened by the knowledge that it connects us to Christ. Second, it calls us to dependence. Our witness is not in our power, but in the Spirit's. We must rely on him, pray for his guidance, and trust his work. Third, it calls us to faithfulness. We are to testify, whether in public proclamation or in daily faithfulness, knowing that the Spirit will use our witness for God's purposes. It also calls us to solidarity. When one part of the body suffers, we all suffer. We must remember and support persecuted believers around the world, lifting them up in prayer, standing with them, and learning from their courage. Their faith reminds us that the cost of discipleship is real, but so is the reward. Ultimately, John 15:18-27 is both a warning and a promise. The warning is that hatred is inevitable for those who follow Christ. The promise is that the Spirit will testify, and we too will testify, empowered by his presence. The hostility of the world does not nullify the mission of the church. It highlights its necessity. The darkness may rage, but the light shines through faithful witness, and the Spirit ensures that the testimony of Christ will never be silenced. In this second part of the passage, then, we find the balance of realism and hope. Realism, because Jesus does not hide the cost of following him. Hope, because he guarantees the Spirit's presence and power. Together, these truths prepare us not only to endure persecution, but to embrace our calling as his witnesses. For when we testify, we are not alone. The Spirit testifies with us, and in that partnership, the gospel continues to advance, even in the face of the world's hatred. As we arrive at the third part of Jesus' teaching in John 15:18-27, the focus sharpens not only on the reality of persecution, but on the enduring call to remain faithful and courageous in the face of it. These verses are a sober reminder that discipleship comes at a cost, but they are also filled with hope because Jesus promises his Spirit to empower his people. The picture he paints is not one of despair, but of mission and victory in the midst of hardship. This final part invites us to take what Jesus said and see how it applies to our lives today, and then challenges us to respond with courage, obedience, and devotion. Jesus' words, "If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first," still echo with relevance. In his time, these words were prophetic preparation for his disciples. They would soon be scattered, threatened, and brought before councils. Peter and John would stand before the Sanhedrin. Paul would be beaten and imprisoned, and countless believers in the early church would face hostility. For them, these words were not abstract. They became their daily experience. Yet even in the face of persecution, they carried the gospel with boldness, and the church grew. What was true then remains true now. The gospel still divides. It brings life to those who receive it, but opposition from those who reject it. Around the world today, many Christians experience open persecution. In some nations, believers are forced to worship in secret. In others, they face imprisonment, economic sanctions, or social exclusion. Even in places with religious freedom, followers of Jesus may encounter ridicule, career barriers, or strained relationships because of their convictions. This reality is sobering, but it also validates the truth of Jesus' words. If we truly belong to him, we will not always fit comfortably into the world. Yet Jesus never intended for his followers to live in fear. Instead, he gave them three great assurances: identity, mission, and power. First, identity. He reminds them that they do not belong to the world because he has chosen them out of it. This truth must shape our perspective. When we experience rejection for Christ's sake, we are not simply being disliked for personal reasons. We are bearing the marks of belonging to him. This is a profound source of encouragement. The world's hatred is not ultimate. God's acceptance is. When we face rejection on earth, we can be assured of welcome in heaven. Second, mission. Jesus ties the disciples' calling directly to his own. A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. In other words, their mission is to continue his work, even if it brings opposition. This is a call to faithfulness. Just as he testified to the Father's truth, they are to testify to his gospel. Their mission is not to avoid conflict at all costs, but to bear witness, regardless of the world's response. The same holds true for us. Our task is not to win popularity, but to proclaim the truth of Christ with love and boldness. Third, power. This is the most crucial assurance of all. When the advocate comes, whom I will send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth who goes out from the Father, he will testify about me. The Spirit's presence guarantees that their mission is not carried out in human weakness, but in divine strength. The Spirit would remind them of Jesus' words, guide them into truth, empower their witness, and comfort them in their trials. This is why the disciples, once fearful and scattered, became bold and unstoppable after Pentecost. Their power did not come from themselves, but from the Spirit who testified with them. For us, this same Spirit dwells within. He gives courage when fear rises. He gives wisdom when opposition confuses. He gives peace when hatred surrounds. He reminds us of Christ's words when we need them most. This is why persecution, while painful, does not have the final word. The Spirit ensures that God's mission continues, even when the world resists it. Now, how should this truth shape the way we live today? First, it calls us to embrace a realistic faith. Too often we are tempted to think that following Jesus should make life easier. But he tells us plainly, following him will bring opposition. When we face hostility, we should not be surprised or disheartened. Instead, we should see it as confirmation that we are truly walking in his steps. This does not mean seeking out persecution unnecessarily, but it does mean being prepared to endure it when it comes. Second, it calls us to cultivate courage. The world may hate, but Christ has overcome the world. Our courage does not come from self-confidence, but from confidence in him. We can stand firm not because we are strong, but because he is with us. The Spirit gives us boldness to speak when silence would be easier, to remain faithful when compromise would be safer, and to love when hatred would be natural. Third, it calls us to love radically. Jesus' teaching in this chapter flows from his command to love one another. In a world of hostility, the church must be marked by unity, compassion, and sacrificial love. Our response to hatred must not be retaliation, but Christ-like love. This is the most powerful testimony of all. When believers are mocked but bless in return, when they are excluded but embrace others, when they are hated but continue to love, the world sees a glimpse of Christ. Fourth, it calls us to remain faithful in witness. And you also must testify, for you have been with me from the beginning. Testifying about Christ is not optional. It is the calling of every disciple. The Spirit testifies, and we are to join him. This does not always mean preaching to crowds. It may mean sharing your faith with a friend, showing Christ through your actions at work, or living with integrity when others cut corners. Every act of faithfulness is a testimony. The question is not whether we will testify, but whether we will do so boldly and consistently. Finally, it calls us to hope. Persecution is not the end of the story. Jesus himself endured the world's hatred, even unto death, but rose in victory. His resurrection guarantees ours. His Spirit ensures his mission will succeed. The hostility of the world is temporary. The triumph of Christ is eternal. When we suffer for his name, we do so with the assurance that glory awaits. This passage also invites us to reflect on the global church. Around the world, millions of believers face daily persecution for their faith. They gather in secret, risk their livelihoods, and endure suffering with remarkable courage. Their witness challenges us to examine our own faith. Are we willing to stand firm in smaller trials when they risk their lives for Christ? Are we willing to count the cost of discipleship in our own context? Their faithfulness is a powerful reminder that Jesus' words are alive today, and we are called to live them out in our generation. The story of the early church shows how Jesus' words were fulfilled. Persecution came quickly, but instead of extinguishing the gospel, it spread it. The blood of the martyrs became the seed of the church. The Spirit empowered believers to testify boldly, and their witness transformed the Roman Empire and beyond. This is the pattern of God's kingdom. Opposition cannot silence his truth. Hatred cannot overcome his love. Darkness cannot extinguish his light. For us personally, this truth should bring both soberness and strength. We must be ready to endure for his name, but we do so with unshakable assurance. The Spirit testifies with us, Christ is with us, the Father accepts us, and our testimony, though costly, is never wasted. So, friend, how will you respond? Will you shrink back when opposition comes, or will you stand firm in the Spirit's power? Will you remain silent when it would be safer, or will you testify boldly to Christ? Will you return hate with hate, or will you choose the radical path of love? The choice is before you, but the Spirit is within you, ready to strengthen and guide. This is the call of discipleship, to belong to Christ, to bear witness to him, and to endure the world's hatred with courage and love. It is not an easy path, but it is the path of true life. If these words stir your heart, I encourage you to take the next step. Do not walk this journey alone. Commit yourself to Christ fully, surrender to the Spirit's power, and live as a faithful witness in your daily life, and let us walk together in this mission. I invite you to subscribe to Holy Path Insights so you never miss a chance to go deeper into the teachings of Jesus. Share this message with others who need courage to stand for Christ, and watch the full video to gain a deeper understanding of what it means to remain faithful when the world opposes you. Remember this truth: if the world hates you, it is because you belong to the one who has already overcome it. Stand firm in him, testify with boldness, love without fear, and rest in the Spirit's power, knowing that your faithfulness is not in vain, but part of God's eternal victory.